Hi there, I'm the Mythkeeper. Welcome back to my channel. This is my second video on the planes of Pathfinder. This video, I'm covering the first set of my inner planes, specifically the elemental planes, earth, air, fire, and water, all that coming at you right now.
The elemental plane of air. Just beyond the material plane floats the immense, seemingly peaceful blue firmament of the plane of air. Known to many as the endless sky, this plane is shot through with enormous clouds, floating cities of fantastic design, meandering sheets of ice and crystal, strange spheres of brass and iron, and even more astounding features. Towering cloud walls mark the borders it shares with the edge of the material universe, and gigantic water bubbles, oceanic ecosystems in their own right, pepper the areas abutting the plane of water. Although its population is scant in comparison to those of the other elemental planes, the plane of air is home to the grand genie society, dozens of mephit kingdoms, and a plenitude of diverse creatures. Breathable air is the plane's most dominant substance, making the plane of air the most hospitable of all the elemental planes for visitors from the material plane. Flying creatures have great advantages here, though non-natives of all sorts might find themselves constrained by the lack of solid ground. Such material does exist in the forms of great chunks of drifting ice originating from the adjacent plane of water and magically suspended hunks of earth and crystal, but such places are few and far between. Although it is the least populated of the elemental planes due to its lack of solid ground, the plane of air still teems with life. Some of the more common denizens include the Jinn. The plane of air's native genies are the true lords of the endless sky. Powerful beings in their own right, they focus on art, culture, trade, and especially the acquisition of knowledge, which brings them great wealth and even greater influence. Calmer and more peaceful than the genies native to other planes, Jinn are nonetheless quick to remind all listeners that they have been the plane's undisputed masters since before the mortal races appeared. This sense of superiority, combined with their paternalism towards non-genies, has earned the Jinn a widespread reputation of insufferable self-importance. Air elementals. Though just as disorganized as other elementals, air elementals have their own culture. They are intelligent, but their mindsets and emotions can change as quickly as the winds from which they are born. The elemental's mother goddess, Hashura, Duchess of all Winds, commands obedience from all but the most rebellious air elementals. Cloud dragons. Cloud dragons are natives of the plane of air and are known for flitting unhindered through the expanse of the endless sky, indulging their fickle whims. They have an innate curiosity and may begin a quest for lore or a lost bauble, only to allow a distraction to sidetrack them for years. Cloud dragons' whimsical journeys sometimes take them away from their home plane. Most cloud dragons on the material plane travel there for a specific but now long-forgotten purpose, and finding the mountain peaks of the material plane quite hospitable, might decide to stay for a time. Mephits. 3 types of mephits dwell in the plane of air, dust, and ice. These minuscule scamps sometimes serve the powerful entities that dwell in the plane of air and are often seen flitting about the plane's great cities, delivering messages or running errands. Sylphs. Although uncommon on their progenitor's home plane, highly capable sylphs have left the material plane in fair numbers to reside in the plane of air. They often work as commanders of airship fleets, or as extraplanar diplomats for the Jinn, or more rarely the elemental population. Still others are high-priced guides for the plane's most esteemed or influential visitors. Locations. The plane of air is full of fantastic places to visit and explore, even beyond the countless natural and artificial landing sites where the natives' commerce and culture thrive. Such locations include Armen Kellisk. The undisputed jewel of the plane of air, the breathtaking genie capital, sprawls across 7 stone, ice, and silver platforms in an homage to the rolling terrain of a terrestrial city. Its splendor reflects the civilization's power and majesty, which is also embodied in the genie's ruler, Sultan Zafir XXXVIII, who presides over his holdings from his palace. Port Eclipse. Port Eclipse is an airship harbor hidden inside a gigantic hollowed-out island. All of the port structures, docks, inns, shops, taverns, warehouses, and more are built on the inner wall of a massive spherical space. Port Eclipse's current mayor is a semi-retired airship captain who goes by the name of Vendria. Vendria and her fellow captains keep the location of the entrance to the island's interior a closely guarded secret, and only their most trusted airship pilots learn the safe routes through the stone tunnels leading into Port Eclipse. The captains make good money taking passengers and goods into port, and they use magic to verify the claims of those looking for passage. The ruins of Nebrinde. A roughly spherical asteroid of bristling spires and perches embellished with elaborate statuary, Nebrinde was supposedly once a massive temple consecrated for the worship of psychopomp ushers. Today, though, it lies in ruin, with over half of its original spires crumbled and many of the countless statues that adorn it broken or defaced. The vast structure falls endlessly through the plane, occasionally reaching planar eddies or focal points that alter its subjective gravity. That the ruin hasn't dashed itself upon one of the plane's other massive solid bodies is a testament to either the unfathomable size of the plane or to the piloting skill of some unknown power. The Sea of Night's Embrace. Not all of the endless sky is filled with daylight. In the Sea of Night's Embrace, the plane's illumination ranges from a permanent twilight all the way to a lightless void. The deeper one travels into the sea, the darker it becomes, until the only light available is that which explorers take with them. The Sea of Night's Embrace is mysterious and dangerous, populated by undead horrors and creatures akin to those found in the material plane's deepest oceans. Some say a portal to the negative energy plane rests at the center of the Sea of Night's Embrace. The Sparkling Principality of Hautansia. Among Mephit nations, the Sparkling Principality of Hautansia is the most infamous. Formed from a collection of rocky islands bound together with a thick layer of solid ice, Hautansia is ruled by his frozen majesty, King Eshakar I. Eshakar puts his unusually powerful ice magic to work in maintaining his kingdom, both by knitting the islands together and keeping his fellow ice Mephits loyal to him. Of course, his popularity is also bolstered by the fact that Mephits are not forced into subservience or disrespected in Hautansia. Verglus Processional. The Palace of Hoshura, Duchess of All Winds, is a translucent construction of air coated with a thin layer of ice. Those within its walls are subject to the unpleasant surprises as walls and even floors move or disappear to suit the whims of the self-proclaimed mother goddess of air elementals. Entire areas within the Verglus Processional have naturally invisible walls, and sometimes even unmarked openings in the floors, making navigation of the palace treacherous. The palace slowly rotates as it hovers above a vortex at the center of which rests a pinpoint of utter blackness. Those who displease Hoshura literally fall out of her favor and risk being sucked into the void. The Elemental Plane of Earth. The most fixed and stable of the elemental planes, the plane of Earth is an effectively limitless domain of dirt, stone, and metal, its lightless depths crisscrossed by a network of interconnected tunnels and caverns. In primordial times, this plane was a single solid shell that barred all but the most acclimated or cunning species from entering. Since the material plane came into being, though, the essences of the other elemental planes, especially the adjacent shells of fire and water, have subtly influenced the plane of Earth. The combination of planar convergences and the arrival of new inhabitants turned the plane of Earth into the vast expanse of interlocking cave systems, bottomless crevasses, and bizarre, unique ecologies of today. The plane of Earth is more populous than most natives and visitors alike realize, as entire societies can thrive within the nooks and crannies that even the most experienced guides won't know exist. Such denizens include crystal dragons. These draconic entities infused with elemental energy claim dominion over several small personal empires in the eternal delve. The flighty nature of crystal dragons doesn't particularly predispose them to the rigors of ruling a nation, but their trade savvy, combined with their altruistic natures, often land them in such roles. Predispositions aside, once in a position of authority, these dragons fiercely protect those in their domain, providing comfortable living conditions free from the slavery that is ubiquitous in Shaitan society. Earth Elementals. Earth Elementals are some of the oldest inhabitants of the Eternal Delve, and they are so attuned to their home plane that some spend entire decades or centuries fused with their surroundings, never revealing their existence until their whims move them to action. Other Earth Elementals traverse the plane's interior like a swarm of insects, moving in dizzying and often unintelligible patterns. Many Earth Elementals, and Mud Elementals to a lesser extent, are reclusive and territorial, clinging ferociously to their ever-changing homes. They have few, if any, reasons to communicate with other inhabitants of the plane, and most others view them as a natural hazard inherent to existence there. Mephits. Mephits are considered pests by the domineering Shaitan neighbors. The peerless Empire subjugates Earth and salt Mephits without a second thought, but due to their sheer number, for every Mephit captured, another 5 go free. More often than not, when Mephits are apprehended, the Shaitans entrap them in extended contracts of servitude or use the Empire's draconic laws to sentence them to extended work for the slightest violation. Ironically, many such Mephits come to appreciate their newfound existence under Shaitan rule, for it allows them to live among the trappings of power and opulence. The longest-serving of these Mephits sometimes move on to become seneschals or minor power brokers within the rigid slave castes of the peerless empire. Oreads. With its abundance of open-air tunnels and caverns, the Eternal Delve has historically appealed to several races more commonly found on the material plane, including dwarves, humans, and even elves. However, the most populous of these races are Oreads, whose ancestors hailed from the plane of Earth. Although relatively common, they typically live in smaller, more isolated populations or scattered among great cities full of other creatures. Oreads mix easily with most of the other natives here, but many never feel truly at home. Most leverage their resiliency and adaptability to serve as envoys between Shaitans and Zorns and even Zeomorns. However, these roles are inherently risky, and more than a few Oriads have found themselves on the wrong side of Shaitan laws or accidentally delivering a fatal insult to a proud Zeomorn. Shaitans. These large genies maintain the expansive Peerless Empire, a nation that spans the borders of the plane of Earth and operates with ruthless efficiency. The Earth Genies are consummate contractors and use their talents to bind a wide array of creatures into serving them in everything from their business interests to maintaining their immaculate homes. They prefer willing servants over slaves, and those who oppose Shaitans are ruthlessly forced into servitude, often spending their remaining existence toiling in the distant reaches of the Peerless Empire's mining operations. Shaitans have some manner of diplomatic relationship with nearly every race that exists on the plane of Earth, even extending to some tentative deals with the Ifrit or other denizens of the adjacent planes. Zeomorns. The Zeomorns are a race of primordial builders and experimenters, whose genius is tempered by a tendency to seize upon endeavors that they lose interest in very quickly. While Zeomorns have spent recent centuries chiefly consumed with building enormous vaults on the material plane, the Eternal Delve Center is full of immense abandoned cavern cities created by the Zeomorns before they abandoned their incredible settlements on what appears to be little more than a whim. Their activities might seem capricious, but the Zeomorns assert that all their actions are driven by exacting goals, whose details they refuse to disclose. Zeomorns are divided into two distinct types, the Vault Builders and the Vault Keepers. The Vault Builders are mythic beings who rule over their lesser Vault Keeper counterparts. Most of the Zeomorns who dwell on the plane of Earth dedicate themselves either to crafting new vaults or venerating their patron, the elemental lord Arzul. Zorns. Driven into solitude by hunger, Zorns are commonly found in the wilderness regions of Plane of Earth, far removed from the territories controlled by other races. They tend to live alone or in small communities known as clusters, distant from the open tunnels that break up the plane. Nivi Rhombodazzle. Unusual among the divine in that she doesn't maintain a realm of her own, Nivi spends much of her time traveling between the material plane and the plane of Earth, on a constant hunt for the next perfect gemstone, or the next high-stakes gamble to add to her growing list of conquests. Locations. Blistering Labyrinth. This radioactive maze is the divine realm of the elemental lord Arzul, also known as the Fossilized King. Elementals, Mephits, and Zeomorns are the only creatures known to be immune to the labyrinth's unnatural entropy, though Zeomorns have little tolerance for the presence of Mephits in their patron's sacred lands. While the Blistering Labyrinth has no formal border markers, the blackened and warped bones of countless creatures form a jagged circumference around it, and the further one travels into the region, the truer the name becomes. Increasingly caustic, leaching heat rises from the rock, threatening to burn even the most powerful visitors. The Blistering Labyrinth becomes a maze of cyclopean bones, with every step taken treading on the remains of those who have come before. At the labyrinth's center lives the Fossilized King, an insular ruler who has never been seen outside his realm. As a result, Arzul is the subject of wild rumors throughout the plane, with speculations on his nature ranging from Shaitan wizard to an undead crystal dragon, or even a fragment of another long-dead deity. Citronide. Immense stalactites of pure citrine line the roof of the cavernous expanse of Citronide. Unnatural light pulsing from within its topaz-like ceiling bathes everything beneath it in a pale yellow glow. Nearly 40 city-states vie for dominance in this continental cavern, each boasting an eclectic assortment of races. Gold Hive. Housing countless miles of raw gold, Gold Hive is one of the Peerless Empire's 86 treasured resource holds, intersecting tunnels, the work of the Empire's slave armies in ages past, crisscross Gold Hive's interior. But centuries of mining operations have yet to make even the smallest impact on the Hive's resources. The Peerless Empire has focused less on managing Gold Hive in recent years, so to preserve it as a holding, the Shaitans have coerced a cluster of Zorns to oversee operations here. Lava Lock. The citadel of Lava Lock rests on the border of the plains of Earth and Fire. Here, magma-dripping towers of blackened metal soar amid tangled rivers of molten slag. A city of Ifriti taskmasters and toil-worn slaves lies just past the fortress's outermost walls. Larger bastions rise from the inner city, forming a center that is at once civilized and militarized. To the majority of the Shaitans on the plain, the settlement is simply an Ifriti outpost. However, to the stubborn leaders of the Opaline Vault, Lava Lock is an unacceptable incursion into their lands by a hated enemy. The Opaline Vault. The great city of the Opaline Vault is the capital of the Peerless Empire, and the ancestral home of many Shaitans, built along a 30-mile-wide geode near the elemental border between the planes of Earth and Fire. Much of the city's architecture has a pearly white veneer, but ubiquitous enchanted glowing spheres of light produce a kaleidoscope of dizzying colors that refract off the geode's walls, resulting in one of the plane's most incredible sights, the beautiful vistas that earn the opaline vault the moniker the Rainbow Metropolis. Vast towers of intermixed gold and platinum rise from a lake of acid-melted gemstones at the geode's cracked center. The coloration of the churning lake constantly shifts, changing based on the specific gems in ascendance and the manipulations of the Shaitan wizards responsible for the lake's ongoing maintenance. The greatest palaces of the peerless empire stand atop spires jutting up from the lake, held from tumbling into the acidic brew below by powerful telekinetic magic. Soaring bridges span the varied islands which are home to Parshas, the Shaitan nobility, and also connect with the Sultan's personal spire that dominates the geode's center. The Sultana of the Opaline Vault, Ashadia bint Khalid, reigns over the peerless empire, having inherited the position following her father's death at the hands of the Ifrit some 500 years ago. The metropolis has seemingly always been at war with the city of Brass, but Ashadia has only intensified the conflict. Massive wealth flows into the Opaline Vault thanks to the Shaitan's relatively peaceful relations with other planar residents, not to mention the city's powerful guild and established trade partners. However, an equally impressive amount of gold evaporates through the construction of weapons and payment of mercenary contracts that fuel the Sultana's vendetta. The past centuries have not been kind to the subjects of the peerless empire, and Ashadia's ongoing crusade against the Ifrit is quickly expending the immense resources of the empire she inherited. Somnisphere. Rings of concentric glass, which prevent native elementals from using their earth glide abilities to breach or escape it, encompass the somnisphere, and strangely reinforced glass cells of various size fill its interior. Each cell has magically sealable doors, and only the vast compound's jailers know how to operate them. These jailers vary in race from elemental-infused humanoids to elder elementals to shaitans to even the occasional crystal dragon. Kivaktam, vault keeper Zeomorn, acts as the somnisphere's warden. Though it once maintained a material plane vault of its own, it lost its charge in some long-forgotten catastrophe, and this vault keeper now manages the somnisphere as equal parts jail and refuge for wild elementals. Stonetide. Buffering the plane's border with a plane of water, Stonetide is a gargantuan confederation of cities. Most of these settlements have Shaitan leaders and strong ties to the peerless empire, but the member cities actually each operate independently. Each is built upon a constantly eroding base of sludgy rock, and settlements routinely collapse into the adjacent plane of water's churning tides. The Shaitan slaves work endlessly to expand Stonetide's infrastructure away from the border, but even as the city expands in one direction, they inevitably shed older districts into the oozing quagmire on the opposite. The elemental plane of fire. Like the brilliant fiery colors that dance within an all-consuming blaze, the plane of fire is both astonishingly beautiful and eminently hostile to most forms of life. Visitors able to safely traverse the inferno are few and far between, as the plane quickly engulfs those without proper protection. Those who can endure its smoldering terrain and the domains of its mercurial and often terribly cruel inhabitants earn serious bragging rights back on their home planes, not to mention the wealth of treasure and adventure they might find there. For some elite explorers, the Plane of Fire's scintillating beauty is reward enough for visiting, though the dangers here are as unrivaled as they are alluring. Immense swaths of the Plane of Fire consist of rolling seas of fire, rivers of lava, volcanic mountains and burning plains, and with skies filled with flame, smoke, and rains of cinders. The landscapes here are strange indeed. In some areas, searing sulphurous fumes supplant all breathable air, but even those places with a breathable atmosphere are often so hot that organic materials instantly sear to a crisp. In other cases, massive columns of fire engulf whole regions and contain their own unique ecosystems. Much of the plane's solid and semi-solid surfaces are seas of liquid fire, molten metal, flowing lava, and other hazardous materials. Rains of melted metal, incendiary mists, and volcanic eruptions occur throughout the plane, often randomly and without warning. Denizens of the Plane of Fire include the Azers. Among the Eternal Furnace's most populous creatures, Azers have a long, complex, and in many ways tragic history on the plane. These sturdy dwarf-like people are hard-working and self-sufficient folk, and they once lived in carefully ordered societies secluded in fortresses of iron and brass scattered across the plane. However, while these societies had internal hierarchies that ensured they functioned as efficiently as clockwork, the ancestral Azer realms never paid much attention to each other or to their homeland's defense, and this left the race ripe for exploitation. Ages ago, as Ifriti cities grew to astonishing proportion in their growing power and desire for conquest, the Ifrit often conquered Azer cities, and sometimes outright enslaved entire populaces, creating an oppressed Azer underclass. One by one, the mighty Azer fortresses fell, their insular inhabitants unaware of the injustices that had happened to their neighbors. Very few free Azer strongholds remain, and empty and ruined fortresses stand across the landscape like iron husks. The Ifrit. The most widely recognized denizens of the Plane of Fire are the Ifrit, and for good reason. Fire genies operate the most powerful empire in the Inferno, the Dominion of Flame. The Dominion's cosmopolitan cities sprawl across the realm, bringing the genies' overbearing elitism, deviousness, and cruelty to every corner of the plane. Their capital, the City of Brass, is among the Great Beyond's most amazing achievements. Fire elementals. The most abundant beings in the eternal furnace are its fire and magma elementals. Were they to form any large-scale cohesive society, they could undoubtedly vie for control for the entire plane, but elementals simply don't think in those terms. Fiercely independent and open to negotiating with any non-hostile beings, fire elementals see themselves more as natural forces than as parts of any larger whole. Mephits. The Inferno's fire mephits are notably for their highly developed society. The theocratic mephits have expanded much in power over recent centuries, and as their realms have grown, their customs, taboos, and rituals have increased in complexity to a degree just short of those of the Ifrit. However, though they are not kind creatures, they are not nearly as haughty or self-obsessed as their more powerful genie counterparts. Feronia. Unlike on the other elemental planes, another divinity of note dwells here, the mysterious demigoddess Feronia, known as the Fertile Flame. Feronia spends much of her time in a great commune built atop the tallest spires of her palace, the Cradle of Flames. Most believe she lives here with her fiery children, whom she's said to have conceived with various divine beings over millennia. Her most famous and only confirmed son is Ragathiel, the product of Feronia's short-lived marriage to the archdevil Despater. While their son was still a babe, Feronia amicably left Hell, taking Ragathiel with her, and nurturing him until he became an imperial lord. The number of other nascent divinities Feronia currently protects remains unknown, but she is said to have thwarted several divine plots to retrieve or slay her charges. Locations on the Plane of Fire include the Auroric Palace. On the edge of the Plane of Fire, standing sentinel against incursions from the Plane of Earth, is the Auroric Palace, home of Imeri, Queen of the Inferno. The massive palace is constructed of crystallized flame that shine and dance brightly, despite their strange solidity. It rests upon an enormous slab of crystal, metal, and stone, the surface of which continually vaporizes from the building's heat, rising in a mist of metal droplets and producing shimmering rains of mercury and magma. The auroras of fire that hang in the sky above the palace in scintillating hues of green, yellow, blue, and white can be seen for hundreds of miles, and denizens believe that particular combinations of colors reflect Imeri's changing moods. The City of Brass. The pride and capital of the belligerent Afriti civilization, and an embodiment of the Plane of Fire's harsh and deadly beauty. The City of Brass rests within a massive basin of hammered brass that floats upon a sea of fire. A sphere of magic fueled by captured souls surrounds it, ensuring that the interior remains at survivable temperatures for most extraplanar visitors. Though the Ifrit acknowledge the necessity of trade and welcome visitors to their capital, they barely conceal their disdain for other species. The city's rulers are Grand Sultana Ayasala Mihilar Khalida II, Lady of Flame and Khan of Magma, and Grand Vizier Abdul Kavi, who maintain an uneasy détente on the surface while attempting to undermine one another behind the scenes. The Grand Sultana is a fierce warrior who leads the city's Afriti armies, while the Vizier is a genius politician, a master of plane-spanning spy networks, and a powerful wizard with nearly unrivaled genie-binding expertise. Ayasela claims that the circumstances under which her predecessor died were engineered by Abdul Kavi, and offers a standing reward of 100,000 gold to anyone who can bring her proof of who killed him, though many believe she suborned his military and secretly executed himself in a swift coup. The Cradle of Flames. Situated on a huge, intricately carved dais of polished obsidian that floats in the middle of a column of brilliant fire, the Cradle of Flames is the home of Feronia, the mysterious demigoddess known as the Fertile Flame. Despite her realm's perilous location, the dais' surface is entirely free of cleansing fire. Flora, in the form of flaming red bushes and vines, wind elegantly throughout the dais' rocky terrain, sustaining all manners of strange wildlife, including intelligent rabbit-like creatures with fiery tails who curiously do not actually burn with any heat. Protecting the Cradle of Flames on Feronia's behalf is a quartet of phoenixes, led by the demigoddess' most powerful minion, the Guardian Blaze, an enormous creature with 6 wings and 4 talons of molten obsidian. The Emberan Recess. Most magma dragons are solitary creatures, given their volatile temperaments and tendency to violent outbursts, but a few of the oldest and most powerful have banded together in a rocky volcanic region surrounded by the seas of molten rock called the Emberan Recess. Here, these mighty creatures rule over their younger brethren and manage large territories. Armies of enslaved salamanders and bound elementals serve the magma dragons by defending the region's borders and building and maintaining its spiky, grandiose structures. Its supreme ruler is an ancient and dangerously unstable magma dragon known as Kalinia. The Ninefold Towers. The Ninefold Towers house the secular and spiritual authority of the Fire Mephit's theocratic society, most notably the Ninefold Matriarch of Holy Sublimation. Here, Queen Diramalia VI lives in splendor, eclipsing that of any other ruler on the Plane of Fire. Its 9 interlinked towers carved from a single massive piece of copper-veined quartz, the plane's heat boils the copper, sending a glittering metallic mist into the air to fall like rain, only to be vaporized again as it approaches the eternal flame that dances around the palace. The matriarch herself resides in the central tower, which is the tallest, while the other 8 are reserved for her esteemed advisory council. Ziara. Known colloquially as the Hearth, Ziara is a diverse settlement that serves as a landing spot and a safe place to stay for visitors from other planes. It is a politically neutral zone, and it is favored by those who do not wish to tread in the more dangerous parts of the city of Brass. Long ago, Axiomite visitors and their inevitable servants founded the city as part of a brief period of exploration before they turned their focus inward to the perfection of their society in the City of Access. Though the Axiomites are long gone, a significant number of Collier-Root inevitables still patrol Ziara's streets, ensuring that order remains in place. The city is protected by a crystalline dome made from an impermeable substance that magically maintains the climate at a steamy but bearable temperature. It is filled with lush jungle foliage, and its ecosystem was so perfectly constructed that it has maintained itself for thousands of years. Visitors to Ziara can stay at an assortment of comfortable inns. Some accept gold, but others require less common currency, such as songs, rare foods, or information, and use these accommodations' spacious courtyards, fine dining establishments, and gardens to conduct their business. Travelers come to Ziara to trade, to attempt to form diplomatic or business partnerships with the residents of the Plane of Fire, or to seek or sell information. The elemental plane of water. With the plane of air serving as its vast sky, and the plane of earth forming its floor, the plane of water is a breathtaking endless ocean of salt and fresh water alike. Generally growing more saline with increased proximity to the plane of earth, the boundless sea nonetheless contains within its primeval tides vast pockets of pristine fresh water, salt-choked dead seas, freshwater rivers flowing in tandem with ocean currents, and even enormous bubbles of floating air, all of which contain their own unique and vibrant ecosystems. Sprinkled throughout the plane are even stranger features, such as enchanted springs that bubble into underwater pools, warping whatever wildlife lives within them, and pockets of acid and poison that form roiling lagoons and refuse to dilute into the surrounding ocean. Enormous whirling torrents of blood and chum, too large to have formed through organic means, sustain environments incomprehensibly alien to all but the most savvy natives of this plane. Although the boundless sea's temperature is largely tepid, strong currents of ice-cold and boiling hot water tear through it, imperiling those unfamiliar with the terrain. Most of the plane is liquid, but foreign elements can be found here as well, like hunks of rock from the plane of earth, chunks of ice from the plane of air, jagged spires of solidified magma. The boundless sea's other light sources include gently filtered light from the plane of air, and near where it meets the plane of earth, massive roving schools of luminescent fish. One thing that does remain constant is that water pressure remains even throughout the plane, allowing disparate forms of life to travel throughout without much difficulty, and kingdoms and creatures alike can and often do grow to unfathomable sizes. Though civilization exists only in pockets in the boundless sea, water-breathing life forms of all types thrive in this elemental plane. Merfolk, Sahagin, numerous other humanoids dwell in the endless depths, gathering in villages, cities, or even nations, while deadly monsters like krakens and scyllas are less common but much feared. Some of the most significant denizens of the plane include brine dragons. Past the boundless sea's salinity interchange, the plane of water teems with brine dragons. Although most scholars assume that the dragons bask aimlessly in the plane's saltier depths, in reality most live there at the behest of Calazendri, elemental lord and brackish emperor. Marids. The boundless sea's water genies claim to be the absolute and rightful rulers of the plane of water in its entirety, but in truth, the disparate Marid nations have been divided for nearly 10,000 years. The event that scattered the Marid's empire was the death of the last Saline Padishah, Nilufar the Great, and the destruction of her capital city of Arzanib by the elemental lord Calazandri. Visitors to the boundless sea tend to find that Marids are some of its most accessible natives. Marid society follows very strong rules of hospitality meant to help facilitate peace between members of their notoriously capricious races. Marids also enjoy foreign visitors and performers for their own sake, and the genies go out of their way to invite and support such guests. Merfolk. Merfolk immigrants to the plane of water prefer to dwell in dimly lit waters, while their deep merfolk kin keep to the lightless seas near the border with the plane of earth. Merfolk are a secretive people, going to great lengths to avoid other races and keep intruders out of their domain. An explorer is more likely to merely feel the presence of merfolk rather than to actually see one, as merfolk weave complex webs of illusion, build decoy cities, and construct misleading trails to lead curious outsiders miles away from their true homes. Sahagin, often dismissed as simple savages, the Sahagin of the Plane of Water are entrenched planar immigrants whose strength should not be underestimated. The boundless sea Sahagin originated from the material plane, and they say alighted here several thousand years ago to fulfill a prophecy. While well known for quick and vicious invasions of neighboring kingdoms, these Sahagin are even more infamous for fighting among themselves. Most major nobles in their cities claim lineage back to the first Sahagin emperor. Sahagin warlords are some of the most adaptable residents of the Plane of Water, grasping for any advantage they can find to bring them greater heights of conquest and power. Kelizandri. Kelizandri, the brackish emperor, is the most notable divinity who keeps a domain on the Plane of Water. Though sightings are rare due to the elemental lord's swings between relative lethargy and periods of bloodthirsty activity. During the former, Kelizandri descends upon territories that are about his empire and engages in wanton destruction, annihilating all who resist and claiming their treasures. During the latter, the elemental lord retreats to the palace of Salt and Bones, resting on the ruins of an ancient married city of carved coral that the emperor long ago conquered and pulled into his realm. Locations in the elemental Plane of Water include Evershale. Mysterious and ancient, Evershale is a miles-long slab of carved rock that holds one of the largest remaining Marid-ruled cities. Though the Marids claimed authority over this massive rocky shelf, they did not create it. Rather, they found it over 15,000 years ago, floating abandoned in the current, and many believe that its strange carvings link it to some ancient civilization long since forgotten. Adding to the city's mystery is its curious dimensional instability. The stone is riddled with one-way portals, most of which lead from desert oases or the bottom of rivers on the material plane to the city, but not vice versa. These portals have resulted in Evershale becoming a refuge for planar fugitives of all types. Having recognized the potential for enormous profits, the Marids embrace their city's role. Guilds, mercenary outfits, merchant companies, and more provide all manner of morally ambiguous services, from creating new identities to accepting assassination contracts with no questions asked. Despite the city's reputation as a haven, Evershale's Marids and non-Marid citizenry alike are more than willing to play both sides of every conflict. Lion's Mouth Hold. Settled in an impossibly enormous kelp forest that stretches from the bottom of the plain to nearly the top, the Lion's Mouth Hold is a natural wonder, and all the more significant for its eponymous inhabitant. The Lion's Mouth is a massive jellyfish composed of billions of intelligent organs, with a bell that floats near the plane of air and tendrils that reach through the entire kelp forest. Mapilek. A mixed community consisting mainly of humans and Selkies, the settlement of Mapilek is carved into the heart of an iceberg, its labyrinthine ice tunnels stretching across the border between the Plane of Water and the Plane of Air. The city's complex system of machines is powered by lightning that its citizens harvest from storms in the endless sky. This energy, collected through metal poles sunk into the ice, is used to maintain an environment that is comfortable for all residents. The mid-sized community also hosts a large construction yard for submersibles, making it a convenient border town for those who wish to travel from the Plane of Air to the Plane of Water. The Palace of Salt and Bones. Storytellers claim that the Palace of Salt and Bones is the richest, most magnificent place in all of the boundless sea. For that reason alone, adventurers sometimes approach it, hoping either to infiltrate it or to offer obeisance to its ruler Kelizandri, the brackish emperor, in exchange for trading rights. However, no ferry operators who value their lives willingly approach the palace, and the few adventurers who actually make it back from such expeditions are forever changed. Alongside their claims that the tales of the palace's wealth are understated rather than exaggerated, these witnesses also note the palace's bizarre pale-skinned servitors and the superficial resemblance they bear to Sahagin. Scholars believe that means the Kelizandri may not only be harvesting Sahagin wealth, but also the Sahagin themselves, warping them into some entirely new species. The Phantom's Ebb. Located in the plane's deepest recesses, Phantom's Ebb is known widely as a space that allows no natural light. The surrounding region is a slowly drifting graveyard of ships, famous for swallowing those unfortunate enough to stumble into it. The Ebb's lightless nature is in truth due to the fact that it consists wholly of shadows and greater shadows, undead terrors that have no need of air and prefer to skulk far from any source of light. Rumors persist of an ancient shadow lord, known only as the Lightless Lord, who holds control over its lesser kin, but if such a being exists, no one has seen it or returned with a tale. Savisura. Savisura is an elaborate temple complex suspended in beautiful green-blue water, illuminated by rays of light that filter down through vast sheets of ice. Followers of the vanished elemental lord Lysianassa excavated it eons ago, carving it from a vast chunk of ice that had been dislodged from the border with the Plane of Air. When Kelizandri defeated Lysianassa, all of Savisura's attendants and worshippers vanished, and the temple soon fell into neglect. As ages passed, both Lysianassa and Savisura were mostly forgotten, and most of the plane's inhabitants now consider the temple to be no more than an eerie relic of a bygone age. In recent years, Water Naga pilgrims have gravitated to Savisura, claiming to seek a deity called the Queen of the Depths. Whether the Nagas literally believe that a deity resides in Savisura or they are describing an allegory is uncertain, but it has been sufficient for them to establish a small outpost in and around the temple. From here they seek and offer massive rewards to adventurers who might help them with an endeavor they refer to only as the Awakening. The Nagas' leader is Lindalis, who claims that only the Queen of the Depths' chosen few can help bring about the Awakening's glory. Vialesk. The Plane of Water's largest independent city, Vialesk, drifts in warm waters, lit by the sunken star called Palixna. One of the few settlements in the Plane of Water capable of supporting air-breathing life, this bustling trade center also serves as the capital of a small nation of Undines, whose ancestors migrated here from the material plane centuries ago, and who lovingly refer to Vialesk as the City of Splendid Waves. Vialesk consists of several tiers of buildings that extend deep into the city's stony foundations, and to heights far above. Vialesk welcomes visitors going to great lengths to accommodate land dwellers and any other races that might wish to visit. Half of its structures are enveloped in a bubble of air magically tethered to the city that provides a breathable atmosphere for merchants visiting Vialesk. The opposite half of the metropolis reaches far down into the watery depths. The upside-down buildings pose no impediment to the aquatic creatures who inhabit them. The city's marketplace lies at the center between these two districts, allowing both land dwellers and water dwellers to visit and do business freely.
And those are the elemental planes in the world of Pathfinder. Coming out next time on this series, I'll be talking about the other planes of the inner sphere, particularly the positive energy, the negative energy, the shadow dimension, and the first world. That'll be in my next video. If you like this content, be sure to like and subscribe. If you've got special requests or comments, let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.